Have you ever met someone who speaks the loudest, but seems to understand the least? Maybe you've been in a room where one person argues endlessly, refuses to listen, and still thinks they're the smartest there. It's frustrating, isn't it? But here's the truth. Stupidity isn't always about lacking intelligence. Sometimes it's about lacking wisdom. Before we dive deep into this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and watch till the end, because the 6 signs we're about to explore will not only change how you see people, they might just change how you see yourself. Marcus Aurelius once said that a wise man seeks to understand himself before he tries to control others. But the foolish, they're obsessed with appearing right. They chase validation, not truth. Today, we're diving into 6 signs of a stupid person through the lens of Stoic philosophy. And as we go through each one, I want you to quietly reflect, have I seen this in others? Or have I seen this in myself? Because the moment you recognize stupidity, both in the world and within, is the moment you step closer to wisdom. 1. They speak more than they think. Have you ever said something in the heat of the moment and wished you could take it back? Maybe to someone you loved? You see, most people don't realize that stupid words don't come from a stupid mind. They come from an uncontrolled heart. And I learned that the hard way. There was a time in my life when I was deeply in love with a woman. Let's call her Sarah. She wasn't just another girl. She was that kind of soul who made silence feel peaceful, not empty. But back then, I didn't understand the power of silence. I used to talk a lot. Whenever she was quiet, I'd assume something was wrong. So I'd fill every pause with words, explanations, opinions, emotions, even arguments. I thought being expressive would make me closer to her, but instead it slowly pushed her away. One evening we had an argument, not because of anything big, but because I couldn't stop talking. She sat quietly while I kept throwing words like weapons, and when she finally spoke, she said something I'll never forget. Sometimes you talk so much that I forget what your silence feels like. That hit me. I remember lying awake that night thinking about what she meant, and it was true. I had become addicted to the sound of my own voice and trying to prove, explain, justify, win. But wisdom, my friend, doesn't live in noise. It lives in the pause before the noise. When we speak more than we think, our ego starts driving the conversation. We stop listening, not just to others, but to what our heart is really trying to say. And that's when relationships start to die, not because of lack of love, but because of lack of space. Have you ever been there? You loved someone so much that you couldn't stay silent, even when silence was the only thing that could have healed the moment. Maybe you texted when you should have waited. Maybe you spoke when you should have listened. And now those words echo in your mind every night before you fall asleep. That's what the Stoics were warning us about. A stupid person talks to defend his pride. A wise one speaks only to share truth, because words are like arrows. Once released, they never return the same. After that night, I learned to love silence again. I started listening more, not just to her, but to myself. And that silence healed things words never could. So if you're watching this and you're in love, remember this. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing, because silence, when guided by understanding, speaks the loudest of all. 2. They react, they don't respond. Have you ever felt that burning rush of emotion right after someone says or does something that hurts you? That moment when your heart beats faster, your chest tightens, and all you want to do is respond. No, react right now. That was me. And it cost me someone I deeply loved. Let me tell you a story. There was a time when I was in a relationship with a woman who meant the world to me. She was the calm to my storm, the softness that made my rough edges smoother. But I had one weakness: I couldn't control my reactions. Whenever she said something that poked my ego, I'd fire back instantly. One day she texted me late at night saying, "I think we've grown distant lately. You're always angry and I don't know why." Instead of listening to the pain behind her words, I reacted. I typed back, "Maybe you're the one who's changed. Don't blame me for everything." And I hit send. The second I did, I felt that sting in my chest. The kind that tells you, you shouldn't have said that. But my pride told me otherwise. It told me I was right, that she needed to understand my side. The next day, she didn't reply. Not because she was angry, but because she was tired of reacting to my reactions. And that night, sitting in the dark, I realized something Marcus Aurelius once hinted at. We can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. A stupid person lets emotion steer the ship. The wise one waits for the storm to pass before speaking. You see, reacting is emotional. Responding is intentional. When you react, you hand over your peace to the other person. But when you respond, you stay in control, and not of them, but of yourself. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times did you send that angry message only to delete it later? How many arguments turned into weeks of silence because you said something you didn't mean? We've all been there. And we've all felt that sinking feeling of regret that comes after a reaction. The Stoics believe that emotions are natural, but being ruled by them is dangerous. Because when your emotions control you, you lose your sense of direction. You become a leaf in the wind, going wherever the storm takes you. I remember one morning after that fight, I saw her sitting in the cafe where we used to meet. She didn't look angry, just quiet, peaceful. And I realized she had learned to respond, while I had spent my days reacting. That was the day I decided to change. Now, whenever I feel that rush of anger or pain, I pause, I breathe, and I ask myself, is this reaction worth my peace? Most of the time, it's not. You see, reacting might make you feel powerful for a moment, but it always leaves you weaker in the end. Responding, on the other hand, might feel difficult, but it earns you respect both from others and from yourself. So if you're in love or ever have been, remember this. Sometimes silence in a heated moment isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Because the one who controls his reaction controls his fate. And when I learned that lesson, I realized I didn't just lose her because I was angry. I lost her because I chose reaction over reflection. Don't make the same mistake. The world belongs to those who pause before they speak. Because that pause, that single breath, can save everything you love. 3, they seek approval, not truth. Have you ever looked in the mirror and realized you don't even recognize the person staring back? You've changed your words, your habits, your energy, all to please someone else. If you have, you're not alone. Because most of us, at some point, have mistaken being liked for being loved. Let me tell you a story, one that still lingers in my chest like a quiet echo. There was a time I was in love with a woman who made me feel like I needed to earn her affection every single day. When she smiled, it felt like the sun came out. When she frowned, my whole world dimmed. So I started bending myself just to keep her light shining on me. If she liked a movie, I pretended it was my favorite too. If she disliked someone, I suddenly disliked them too. I stopped saying what I truly felt, because I was terrified that honesty would push her away. Every yes that came out of my mouth killed a little bit of who I was inside. And for a while it worked. She liked me, but she didn't love me because I wasn't me anymore. I had become a reflection of what I thought she wanted, not who I really was. Have you ever done that? Changed your tone, your opinions, your energy, just to keep someone close? Maybe you laughed when you didn't find something funny, or stayed quiet when you knew you should have spoken up. That's what the Stoics called living for the crowd, and it's one of the clearest signs of a foolish mind. A stupid person seeks approval. A wise person seeks truth. Approval is temporary and it keeps you chasing more and more, like a thirst that never ends. But truth? Truth sets you free. I remember one evening, we were out for dinner and she asked me, "Why don't you ever disagree with me?" I smiled nervously and said, "Because I don't want to fight." She looked down, then quietly said, "Then who am I even talking to?" That question hit me harder than any argument could. In that moment, I realized she didn't want a reflection. She wanted a man, and I had become a shadow. When you live for approval, you lose your authenticity. You stop growing because you fear disapproval. You stop speaking because you fear judgment. You stop being yourself. And in the process, even love loses its meaning. The Stoic way teaches that inner peace comes only when your actions align with your truth. If you must lie to be loved, that love will eventually suffocate you. If you must hide to be accepted, that acceptance will one day turn to resentment. So I did something painful but necessary. I stopped pretending. I started speaking honestly even when my voice trembled. And yes, she left, but for the first time in a long time I felt free. Because truth may cost you people, but it gives you back your soul. And here's the irony. When you no longer chase approval, you attract something far greater, respect. So if you're watching this and you're constantly trying to prove your worth to someone, stop. You are not meant to be everyone's favorite. You are meant to be real. Because the moment you stop seeking approval, you stop being a puppet and start becoming a person. And that's the day wisdom begins. They blame everyone but themselves. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to say, "It's not my fault"? It slips off the tongue so naturally, almost comforting, right? Because when we blame others, we don't have to face the truth about ourselves. But here's the thing, truth doesn't go away just because we refuse to look at it. Let me tell you a story, not about someone else, but about me. There was a time in my life when everything started falling apart. My relationship, my friendships, even my sense of direction. I kept telling myself, it's because of her. She changed. She stopped caring. She didn't understand me. Every failure, every disappointment, I pinned it on someone else. It made me feel better for a while, because as long as it was their fault, I didn't have to change anything. But here's the truth no one told me back then. The more you blame others, the more powerless you become. I remember the day everything hit me. It was after another fight with the woman I loved. She looked at me, tears in her eyes, and said, "Do you realize that in every story you tell, you're always the victim?" Her words cut deep. Not because she was cruel, but because she was right. That night I sat alone in my room. The silence was heavy. And for the first time, instead of thinking about what she did wrong, I asked myself, what if it was me? That question changed everything. You see, a stupid person avoids self-reflection because it hurts. It's easier to say they did this than to admit, I could have handled that better. But the Stoics believed that wisdom begins when blame ends. When you stop pointing fingers outward, you finally have two hands free to build yourself. I started replaying the moments I used to defend myself so aggressively. The late replies I blamed on her disinterest, when in truth I was emotionally distant. The arguments I said she started when it was my pride that refused to listen. The heartbreak I thought she caused when it was my ego that pushed her away. The truth is, blaming others gives you temporary relief but permanent blindness. You can't fix what you refuse to see. Think about it. How many relationships in your life ended with you saying, they just didn't understand me? How many times did you call someone toxic without realizing your reactions fed that same toxicity? It's a hard pill to swallow, but every person who hurt us also taught us something about ourselves. Maybe they showed us where our boundaries were weak. Maybe they revealed how easily we lose control. Maybe they exposed the parts of us that still needed healing. That's not pain, that's growth disguised as pain. The day I stopped blaming her, everything started changing. I became calmer, more honest, more grounded. And that's what a stupid person does. They treat every conversation as a competition, not a classroom. They want to be right, not better. For months after she left, I carried those words with me. You never listen to understand. I began to notice how often I tuned people out. Friends, mentors, even life itself. The world was offering me lessons every day, but I was too proud to accept them. And here's the dangerous part. When you refuse to learn, life will teach you through pain. That's exactly what happened to me. I lost her not because I didn't love her, but because I thought love was enough, that I didn't need to learn how to keep it, nurture it, understand it. The Stoics believe that wisdom isn't about collecting knowledge. It's about becoming a student of life. Every single day, to them, even the smallest event, a delay, a heartbreak, a mistake, was a teacher in disguise. But a foolish man doesn't see that. He repeats the same mistakes and calls it bad luck. Let me ask you something personal. How many times have you gone through the same kind of heartbreak, the same kind of disappointment, the same kind of loss, and blamed the world instead of asking, what is life trying to teach me here? That's what I finally started doing. When I began to learn, truly learn, everything changed. I read, I reflected, I stayed silent more often. And slowly I began to see that every person I meet knows something I don't. Every pain I feel hides a lesson I need. The more I learned, the lighter I became. Because learning humbles you and humility frees you. Refusing to learn traps you in a loop of repeated pain. But the moment you decide to listen, not to respond, not to defend but to grow, you evolve. So if you're watching this and you're tired of feeling stuck in the same patterns, ask yourself, am I really unlucky? Or just unwilling to learn? Because life will keep sending you the same lessons until you finally understand them. And that's the difference between the wise and the foolish. The fool fights the lesson. The wise man learns it. So don't be afraid to say, I don't know. Because those 3 words don't make you weak. They make you ready. Ready to change. Ready to grow. Ready to finally become someone who listens. Not just with his ears, but with his soul. 6, they judge others without understanding themselves. Have you ever looked at someone and thought, they're the problem? Maybe it was your ex, a friend who betrayed you, or someone who disappointed you. It feels good, doesn't it, to judge? Because for a moment, it puts us above them. It makes us feel right, even when we're not. But here's the painful truth I learned. Judgment says more about the one judging than the one being judged. Let me take you back to a time when I learned this lesson the hard way. I was in a relationship that ended badly. She left and I was angry. Not just hurt, but deeply bitter. I told my friends she never cared. She was selfish. She didn't value what she had. And the more I said it, the more righteous I felt. I convinced myself that she was the villain and I was the victim. But here's what's strange. Even months after she left, I still felt heavy. Every time her name came up, something inside me twisted. One night, I was scrolling through my old messages guide, and I found one that stopped me cold. It was a message she sent months before the breakup. It said, "You don't see how your silence hurts me. You think I don't notice when you shut me out, but I do." I stared at that line for minutes, and suddenly it hit me. I had been so focused on her flaws that I never looked at my own. That was the night I realized I wasn't angry because she was wrong. I was angry because she had shown me a part of myself I didn't want to see. You see, that's what judging others really is. A mirror reflecting the things we refuse to confront inside ourselves. When we say someone is arrogant, sometimes it's because we secretly crave that same confidence. When we call someone selfish, maybe it's because we wish we had the courage to put ourselves first once in a while. When we call someone cold, maybe it's because we've forgotten how to stay open. The Stoics often spoke of self-awareness, that before you correct the world, you must correct yourself. Because if you can't understand your own flaws, your judgments will always be unfair. But most people don't want to do that. It's easier to criticize than to introspect. Easier to gossip than to grow. I remember the day I finally stopped blaming her and started asking, what was my part in this? It was painful, but it was also freeing. Because when you stop judging, you start understanding. And understanding is where wisdom begins. I realized that she wasn't the villain. She was my teacher, a mirror sent to reveal my impatience, my pride, my emotional walls. And once I saw that clearly, I couldn't hate her anymore. I could only thank her silently for showing me what I needed to heal. So let me ask you something personal. Who in your life are you still judging? Your ex? Your parents? A friend who hurt you? What if, just what if, they're not the problem, but the mirror showing you where you still need to grow? Because the truth is, judging others is easy, but understanding yourself, that's courage. The fool hides behind judgment. The wise man looks within. And once you learn to look inward, you stop trying to fix people and start refining your soul. So the next time you're about to criticize someone, pause and ask, what part of me do they reflect that I haven't yet accepted? That question alone can transform you, because wisdom doesn't come from seeing the flaws in others. It comes from recognizing your reflection in them. And that's when judgment turns into understanding. That's when pain turns into peace. So stop judging, start seeing, because every person you meet, even the ones who hurt you, are just mirrors showing you who you are becoming. And once you understand that, you'll stop judging others and finally start understanding yourself. At this point, you might realize something important. Stupidity isn't about a lack of intelligence. It's about a lack of awareness. Some of the most educated people in the world act like fools because they can't control their ego. And some of the simplest, quietest people you'll ever meet carry more wisdom than an entire library because they know themselves. The Stoic path isn't about appearing smart. It's about becoming peaceful, disciplined, and emotionally untouchable. So as we wrap this up, ask yourself, do I speak more than I think? Do I react more than I reflect? Do I seek approval more than truth? Do I blame more than I grow? Do I resist learning? Do I judge instead of understanding? If you recognize even one of these signs within yourself, congratulations. That's the first step to wisdom, because fools deny their flaws. The wise transform them. Sharp ending. Remember, true intelligence isn't how much you know, it's how well you understand yourself. So stay humble, stay curious, and stay silent enough to listen, not just to others, but to your own inner voice. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.